Hello everybody, and thank you for tuning in. One of the most common questions I get, whether I'm visiting on campuses or doing interviews, is what should I read? Especially the young people who are starting to get excited about the freedom philosophy, and they want something to read to fortify what we've been talking about. And there are so many, it's hard to pick. There are literally not hundreds, but probably thousands of books now and articles that are very, very good. I frequently mention the book that I read early on, even though I don't recommend it as the first book, and that's The Road to Serfdom by Hayek. And Hayek is an Austrian economist and has written about economics but predicted a lot of problems that we have today. But it isn't the easiest book in the world to read and to start with. So I would pick something else if you're starting out, and that is to understand a basic principle of libertarianism, and that is Frederick Bastiat's The Law. Because this makes a very, very strong point. It's very short, easy to read, very clear, but if you understand the point made by Bastiat about the morality of the law, you can understand everything else that we talk about. And the basic point he makes is that you, as a citizen, have limitations. You can't hurt other people or take other people's property, but he applies that to government as well. We work on an assumption that all dictators and even interventionism assumes that governments are different. They have more authority, more power, more responsibility. They're supposed to make the people better, and they're supposed to make sure there's nobody falls through the cracks, and the economy needs regulated, and nobody's smart enough, the market isn't smart enough to know what interest rates should be, so there's a need for a Federal Reserve. But the truth is governments, if you can't do it, the government shouldn't be allowed to do it either. You're not allowed to steal, the government isn't allowed to steal. If you ever come to the conclusion that taxation is theft, especially when it's used for redistribution, whether it's an income tax or through inflation, we realize how evil it can be and how detrimental it is and how it hurts the average person and it benefits the very wealthy. But there was another book that I read early on that I think is very worthwhile to read, and that's Henry Hazlitt's book, The Economics in One Lesson. Henry Hazlitt is well known in Austrian circles because he befriended Mises. When Mises escaped Nazi Germany and got to the United States, Hazlitt was one of the few individuals, a journalist, but understood free markets, knew about Mises, and he befriended Mises, and Mises, of course, was mistreated by all the universities. But Hazlitt wrote this book, Economics in One Lesson. That is worth reading. It's a great introduction to free market economics, and it's been around a long time, and it's one that can really give you a broad viewpoint of economic policy. Another book that is easy to read, it's a little bit bigger, and it was written by a student of Mises, and that is Murray Rothbard, somebody that I knew quite well. And his book, America's Great Depression, was an eye-opener for me because it really dispelled the myths that the whole mess of the 30s and Roosevelt caused all the problems. It was Roosevelt that prolonged the Depression, although politically, Hoover got all the blame for it. But if you were raised as a Republican, as I was, we were told that, well, Hoover was misblamed, it was all Roosevelt's fault, and what Roosevelt did by introducing so much of this welfareism and government spending and debt and war, that he was the culprit. But Murray goes through this and shows how the seeds of the Great Depression were planted in the 20s under Republicans, and they established programs early on that as they lingered and grew, things got much worse, and Roosevelt certainly did that and prolonged the Depression, something that Japan has done recently, something that we're doing currently right now. The actual format of our Great Recession isn't exactly like the Great Depression of the 30s, but the problems are there. The rich are getting richer, and the poor are getting poorer, and the middle class is being wiped out. And it's all a consequence of too much government intervention. And last, I have one book that happens to have been authored by myself that I think is worthwhile reading, because I tried to put into one book a sort of a description of how you take this philosophy that these various individuals have written about and how you apply it to specific events or specific problems or specific issues. And that's liberty defined. I try to use the definition of liberty and free markets and apply it to individual events, whether it's economics, civil libertarian, or foreign policy. And there are 50 different subjects, so there are like 50 small chapters in there. And a good way to, that I at least made an attempt to take the philosophy and apply it to these specific events. But believe me, there are a lot more books, and they're available now, easily available. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them from LewRockwell.com from the Mises Institute. So in the old days, when I was trying to find books, it was very difficult. There was no internet, and everything was saturated with socialism and Keynesianism and communism and fascism. But there was always a small group somewhere that held on to the remnant of the true believers. But right now, that remnant is much, much bigger, and a lot of room for optimism, because ideas have consequences. And right now, the books being written are so often now, more so than ever, oriented toward a free society with free markets. So enjoy yourself, find a couple of those books, and take time to read them. Thank you for joining, and come back to the Ron Paul channel soon.